can I come too? Mama sighed she was only getting medicine. The boy waited all night. The boy's legs dangled from the porch steps, bare heels drumming against the rotted wood. 23 cars had passed since the streetlight came on. None of them was Mama's rusted Honda. His comic book hung in 2 pieces, torn down the middle, where Superman's cape used to be whole. The porch light buzzed and flickered, casting yellow shadows that made everything look sick. 24. A pickup truck rumbled past without slowing. The boy's voice cracked like dry leaves. Dawn crept over the tobacco fields, painting the sky the color of old bruises. Grandmother's house shoes shuffled across the porch boards behind him. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in her nightgown, looking down at his unwashed hair and yesterday's Superman shirt. "Come inside, baby," she said. 30 minutes. The boy didn't turn around. His fingers traced Superman's broken face on the comic book cover. "I know. She said she was just getting medicine." "I know, baby." Grandmother's hand touched his shoulder, gentle but heavy, like she was carrying something too big for her old bones. The boy finally looked up at her face. Her eyes were red around the edges, same as his. "She said medicine, Meemaw." "I know, baby. She said 30 minutes. The words hung in the morning air like smoke. Grandmother's mouth opened and closed without sound. Down the road, another car approached. The boy's head snapped toward the sound, hope flashing across his face like lightning. But it was just another stranger, another car that wasn't coming home. How long is 30 minutes supposed to be? The boy's voice was smaller now, almost lost in the cricket song. Grandmother sat down beside him on the steps. The wood groaned under her weight. She pulled him close, and he smelled coffee and sadness on her clothes. Sometimes 30 minutes stretches out longer than we want it to. Like taffy. Like taffy. The porch light finally gave up its fight and went dark. Day had officially come to the hollow, but it felt more like an ending than a beginning. The boy folded his broken comic book and tucked it into his pocket. Superman would have to wait. Grandmother's fingers shook as she dialed the sheriff's office. The boy pressed himself against the hallway wall, bare feet silent on the cold linoleum. Through the kitchen doorway he could see her hunched over the phone, still wearing yesterday's clothes. "Sheriff Davis? This is Clara Hutchins." The boy held his breath. Grandmother's voice sounded different, harder. "My daughter Sarah didn't come home last night. She went to get medicine." Static crackled through the phone. The sheriff's voice was too low to hear, but Grandmother's face went stone cold. "What do you mean, how these girls get?" More static. Grandmother's knuckles went white around the phone. "Sheriff, this is the 4th woman this month. Now, Miss Clara, you know how these girls get when they're hurting. They go looking for things to make the pain stop. These girls? That's my daughter you're talking about." The boy's stomach twisted. He'd never heard Grandmother use that voice before. "Like broken glass. 4 women, Sheriff. All mothers. All went for medicine." "Where are they?" "Clara, you need to calm down. Don't you tell me to calm down." "Where did they go for this medicine?" Silence stretched through the house. The boy could hear his own heartbeat. "Everyone knows where they go, Clara. Up to Doc Morrison's place." "For what kind of medicine?" "The kind that helps them forget." Grandmother slammed the phone down so hard the kitchen table jumped. The boy scrambled back into the shadows as she turned toward the hallway. Her eyes were wild, scared in a way that made his chest tight. "Baby, you in there?" "Yes, ma'am. Come here." The boy stepped into the kitchen. Grandmother sat back down at the table, her hands flat against the wood like she was trying to hold something down. "Your mama went to see a doctor. Is she sick?" "In a way." "What kind of medicine did she need?" Grandmother looked out the window toward the hills where the big houses sat. Her mouth moved without sound for a moment, the kind that makes mothers disappear. The words hit the boy like cold water. Outside, a car engine started somewhere up the hollow. They both turned toward the sound, hope and fear mixing in the morning light. Grandmother's truck wheezed up the winding hill road, past rusted mailboxes and overgrown driveways. The boy pressed his face against the passenger window, watching the houses get bigger as they climbed higher. At the top of the hill sat the biggest house of all, white columns gleaming like teeth in the morning sun. "That's where your mama went." The boy stared at the sprawling porch and manicured lawn. A swing set sat in the side yard, but something felt wrong about it. Children played on the swings, but they moved too slow, like they were underwater. Why are those kids here? Same reason you might be here soon. Grandmother pulled the truck to a stop across the road. The boy counted 5 children in the yard. He recognized little Emma Briggs, whose mama sold tomatoes at the farmer's market. And there was Tommy Chen, the quiet boy from Sunday school. I know them. I know you do. A woman appeared at one of the upstairs windows. She pulled back a white curtain just enough to peer down at the truck. Her face was pale, hollow around the eyes. When she saw them watching, she dropped the curtain like it burned her fingers. Who's that lady? The doctor's wife. Why does she look scared? Because she knows what her husband does. The boy watched the children play their silent games. None of them laughed. None of them called out to each other. They just swung back and forth like broken toys. Where are their mamas? Grandmother's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Gone. Gone where? Just gone, baby. The front door of the big house opened. A tall man in a white coat stepped onto the porch. He raised his hand toward their truck, not waving hello, but telling them to move along. His smile was wide and empty. I don't want medicine. Nobody does, honey. Nobody does. Grandmother put the truck in gear. As they pulled away, the boy turned in his seat to keep watching. The doctor was still standing on his porch, still smiling his empty smile. The woman at the window had disappeared completely. The children kept swinging in their strange, silent rhythm. Will Mama come back? Grandmother didn't answer right away. The truck bounced down the hill, leaving the White House behind them like a bad dream. We're gonna find out. But her voice sounded like she already knew the answer. And it wasn't the one the boy wanted to hear. Something moved in the woods, behind Grandmother's house. The boy sat up in his narrow bed, listening to branches snap and leaves rustle. It wasn't wind. Wind didn't sound like footsteps. Grandmother snored in the next room, deep and steady. The boy slipped from his bed and crept to the kitchen window. Moonlight turned the backyard silver. The old well sat in the center of the yard like a dark mouth, its wooden cover askew. The sounds came again. Closer this time. He pulled on his sneakers and stepped onto the back porch. The night air smelled like honeysuckle and something else. Something sweet and rotten. His bare legs shook as he walked toward the well. The wooden cover had been moved. Definitely moved. Grandmother always kept it tight and centered. The boy peered into the black hole and saw something glinting at the bottom. Glass catching moonlight. He found Grandmother's old rope in the shed and lowered himself down. The well was dry, had been for years. At the bottom, scattered like fallen stars, were dozens of pill bottles. All of them empty. All of them with his mother's name printed on white labels. Sarah Hutchins. Take as needed for pain. Sarah Hutchins. Take twice daily for anxiety. Sarah Hutchins. Take before sleep for restlessness. The boy's hands shook as he read label after label. All from Dr. Morrison. All dated within the last year. This wasn't medicine. This was something else entirely. Mama? The voice came from the woods, soft and familiar. Come here, baby. The boy dropped the bottles and scrambled up the rope. At the edge of the woods, a shadow stood between 2 pine trees. It had his mother's shape, his mother's voice. Mama, is that you? Come here, baby. Come with me. The shadow moved deeper into the trees. The boy took a step forward, then stopped. Mimo said, you're not real. I'm real as you're missing me. The shadow stretched out its arms. The boy's feet moved toward the woods without his permission. Everything in him wanted to follow, to run into those familiar arms. Come on, baby. I've been waiting. But something cold touched his spine. The pill bottles. The empty labels. The children on the swings who never laughed. No, the shadow stopped moving. No, Mama, you're not Mama. The shadow began to fade, dissolving like smoke in the moonlight. The boy climbed back through his bedroom window, just as headlights swept across the front yard. Car doors slammed shut one after another. Voices carried through the night air, low and urgent. He pressed his ear to the bedroom door. Clara, it's Ruth. And Dolores. Margaret's here too. Grandmother's footsteps hurried across the living room. The front door creaked open. Y'all come in. Coffee's on? The boy crept into the hallway. Through the kitchen doorway, he could see 4 women sitting around grandmother's small table. Ruth Chen, Tommy's grandmother; Dolores Briggs, Emma's aunt; Margaret Walsh, whose daughter Beth had vanished 2 weeks ago. "Found these at the bottom of my well." Grandmother dumped the pill bottles onto the table. "They clattered like bones, same as what I found in Beth's purse," Margaret whispered. "All from Morrison." "Emma's mama had a whole shoebox full," Dolores said. "Same labels, same lies." Ruth picked up one of the bottles, turned it over in her weathered hands. "My Lucy started acting strange after her first visit, distant, like she was sleepwalking." "How many more are we gonna lose?" "None. This ends tonight." The women leaned closer together. Their voices dropped even lower. "Sheriff won't help. He's in Morrison's pocket, has been for years." Takes his cut to look the other way. Margaret's fist hit the table, making the bottles jump. 4 women gone, 4 children left behind. And that badge-wearing coward calls it medicine. What about the law? Grandmother stood up, walked to the window that faced the hill. The doctor's house glowed like a white tumor against the dark sky. "We are the law now." The boy's chest went hollow. He understood now what grandmother meant when she said 30 minutes could stretch like taffy. His mother wasn't coming home in 30 minutes or 30 hours or 30 years. She was gone, same like all the others. Morrison's got to pay. And the sheriff, both of them. What about the children up there? We get them out first, then we burn it down. The women's voices rose together like a prayer or a curse. The boy slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold linoleum. Through the kitchen window, he could see the doctor's house watching them back, all its windows lit up like evil eyes. "Tomorrow night," Grandmother said, "we end this." The boy closed his eyes and tried to remember his mother's real voice, not the shadow voice from the woods. But the memory felt thin as smoke, slipping away like everything else. The boy pressed his face against the bedroom window as 4 dark figures walked up the hill road. Grandmother led the group, her shoulders squared like a soldier. Behind her came Ruth, Dolores, and Margaret, each carrying something in their hands. Gas cans, matches, justice. The White House blazed with light. Every window glowed yellow against the black sky. The boy could see the doctor moving from room to room, his white coat flashing like a ghost. At an upstairs window, his wife stood perfectly still, watching the women approach. The confrontation began on the front porch. The boy couldn't hear words, but he could see bodies moving, hands gesturing. The doctor stepped outside, his arms spread wide, like he was trying to calm wild animals. Then the front door opened wider. The doctor's wife appeared beside her husband. She was carrying something, a cardboard box. She walked down the porch steps and handed it to her grandmother. More boxes followed. The wife made trip after trip, bringing out box after box. Pills, records, evidence. Her husband grabbed her arm, tried to pull her back. She shook him off and kept walking. The women spread out around the house. Gas splashed against white siding. The sharp smell carried down the hill to the boy's window. The doctor's wife lit the first match herself. Flames climbed the porch columns like hungry fingers. Orange light danced across the yard where the silent children had played on their broken swings. The doctor ran from window to window, trying to escape his burning kingdom. Sheriff Davis's cruiser screamed up the hill just as the roof caught fire. Red and blue lights mixed with orange flames, turning the night into a carnival of destruction. The sheriff jumped from his car, badge glinting in the firelight. "You ladies need to disperse." Grandmother turned to face him, her hair wild in the heat. "We need our daughters back." "That's not how this works." "It is now." The sheriff's hand moved toward his gun. Ruth stepped forward, then Dolores, then Margaret. 4 women against one corrupt badge. The doctor's wife joined them, her nightgown singed but her spine straight. "Stand down, Sheriff. Mrs. Morrison, get away from these women. These women are my neighbors, my friends. They're doing what you should have done years ago." The house collapsed in on itself with a sound like thunder. Sparks shot into the sky like dying stars. The boy watched from his window as his mother's poison burned away to nothing. Sheriff Davis backed toward his cruiser, his hands still on his gun, but his eyes defeated. The women stood in a line, silhouetted, against the flames, and watched justice consume the hill. Dawn painted the hillside gray and gold. Smoke still rose from the blackened foundation where the doctor's house had stood. The boy walked across the yard, his bare feet wet with dew, carrying 2 pieces of wood he'd found in grandmother's shed. The cross was simple, just 2 boards nailed together with rusty nails. He'd carved his mother's name into the wood with a kitchen knife. Sarah. Not the shadow from the woods, not the empty bottles in the well. Just Sarah. He planted it in the soft earth beside grandmother's tomato plants. The cross looked small against the morning sky, but it felt right, final. Is she in heaven now? Grandmother knelt beside him in the dirt, her old hands already working the soil. She pulled weeds with gentle fingers, making space for new growth. She's wherever she needs to be. Can I visit her every time you remember her real self? The boy thought about that, his real mother. The one who read him comics and made pancakes on Sunday mornings. The one who sang off-key lullabies and laughed at her own terrible jokes. Not the woman who went looking for medicine to stop the hurting. Will you teach me about the garden? Course I will. Grandmother handed him a packet of seeds, green beans, his mother's favorite. They worked together in the morning light, planting hope in the ashes of yesterday's pain. Why did she need the medicine so bad? Sometimes people hurt in places you can't see. Sometimes that hurt gets so big they'll do anything to make it stop. Even leave their kids? Even that. The boy pressed seeds into the earth, covering them with dirt and tears he didn't know he was crying. Up on the hill, the ruins of the doctor's house looked like a broken tooth against the sky. Will the hurt go away now? Some of it. The rest we'll learn to carry better. A car drove past on the road below. The boy didn't count it or hope it might stop. Some waiting was over now. Some questions had been answered in fire and ash, and the courage of women who refused to lose another daughter. He patted the soil over the last seed and sat back on his heels. Tomorrow he would water this garden. Tomorrow and every day after, until something beautiful grows from all this ending.